Nuvo just came out with their new line of Crackle Mousse, and I couldn't wait to have a play with them and share here. Hello and welcome to Karen's Creative Cards on YouTube. I am Karen Hashik, and I love to design with new interesting products to create unique backgrounds and embellishments on my cards. I was a big fan of Nuvo's Expanding Mousse already, and I have a bunch of colors of those. That's the Nuvo Expanding Mousse in the round jars. And I'm going to share my comparison of the two types of mousse as well as many card samples and tips. These are the three colors that I started with the Crackle Mousse. There is a Celestial Blue, a Wrought Iron Black, and a Egyptian Gold. And here's a sample sheet of the three colors of Crackle Mousse that I have. As you can see, if you apply them thickly, the cracks are bigger, and thinner, the cracks are smaller. So I just swiped some on a piece of cardstock and waited. The thicker parts have bigger cracks, and the smaller or the thinner areas have smaller cracks. So you can decide what you like. I just was experimenting on this. I'll show you on a card. I applied a little bit of black ink through a stencil, and that did work here. Now it takes a very long time to dry the Crackle Mousse, and you cannot use a heat gun. For one thing, you won't get cracks, which defeats the purpose. And online, some people said it smoked and might even catch on fire. I have no idea if it would go that far. But you cannot use a heat gun to dry the Crackle Mousse, and best is probably just to let it sit overnight. I'm going to say in my samples at least 4 or 5 hours, depending on how thick it was. As I'm going to show you, the Expanding Mousse, which is the kind that I have more colors of and came out a while ago, you can heat set that right away. It will expand and bubble with great texture. So that's a plus for that type of mousse, in my opinion, especially if you get impatient like I do. So here's a couple cards that I made with the colors of Crackle Mousse I purchased, and some favorite stencils and dies. And all the details on all the cards that I show you will be on my blog, and of course links to the description are links to my blog, and the products are in my description. But here's one that I did with Crackle Mousse through a stencil to make kind of waves. And here's a little bit of one of the issues that I did have with a Crackle Mousse. It will chip off, especially if you're doing it like on this card. I had a big area in the stencil. I love this stencil. I made a sympathy card for a loss of a pet with this stencil from a Colorful Life Designs, but it had more openings, and a lot of the first one that I did just chipped right off. So I found that if I used a matte finish, clear protective finish, this is like a fixative, on the Crackle Mousse after I did it. It had to crack first, you know, let it sit for hours and hours, let it crack, and then before you make a card with it, spray it with some type of fixative, and that in my experience did solve the problem. So again, in this case I did the black through a beautiful stencil, let it sit for quite a while, and then it cracked. I'm hoping you can see those. It is pretty cool, you know, and it just happens with just time. Okay, another thing is you don't want to try Crackle Mousse on acetate or any cardstock with a glossy finish. It will fall right off when it's dry, which of course I did try. But in all the cards that I'm showing in this video, I used Ken Oliver's Color Burst Splash cardstock, and that did not have a glossy finish, so that stayed on perfectly fine. Here's one more sample of a card that I did with the Crackle Mousse. I'm also going to show you how, even if you only have a few colors, you can add some type of liquid watercolor, or maybe even like a distress ink with water to change the color. So I decided I wanted to change, actually it's this one here, I changed the gold to a little more purpley with some watercolor pen I have from Nuvo, and again I'm going to show you how I did that. I am going to order, in fact I already have an order online with scrapbook.com for several more colors of the Crackle Mousse, and what I'm going to get is the Russian white color, because that can be easily made into any color you might want by just adding inks or watercolors. So I'm going to try that one and do highly recommend it. I'm going to show you how I suggest to open up and store either any type of the mousse, the Expanding Mousse, the Crackle Mousse, the regular mousse, and many other products that are like this on the market. When you first open it up, you'll see that there is a sealed aluminum foil type cover. I open that with a knife around the edge, and then I bend it back and keep that on. That's just a suggestion, but you're going to pick it up with a palette knife and use it, and when you're done you can keep that on, and then you're going to take a piece of press and seal and seal that on there, and then close it up, and this will help to not have them harden after openings. So if you do both those things, and you know, I didn't always do it, but I've learned, especially the press and seal, you're going to want to do so that the next time hopefully it won't be hardened. Here are some more sample cards I have. Here's a direct comparison between the Crackle Mousse and the Expanding Mousse. So I used a favorite Gina K stencil there, and I changed the color of the gold by adding a little bit of green. In this case I just made it kind of an olive green, but I'm going to show you how you can make it even prettier by adding even more color. I especially like that green, how that turned out. I put the Crackle Mousse through a Gina K stencil, let it sit for a while until it cracked, and because I put this on thinner, the cracks are pretty small, but I still like the look. And then I added some Nuvo Midas Touch Aqua Shimmer pen to it on top, and added a little shimmer to the top of that, and I like how that turned out. Here is one that I did with the Expanding Mousse. So it's the same stencil and everything, same paper. In this case I put the Expanding Mousse through that stencil, and then I was able to heat set it right away, and that puffed up and has great texture. So I like the look of that as well. Here's another sample with a new favorite stencil from a Colorful Life Designs, and it is with this color of Expanding Mousse, which is the red linen. And again, these were thinner openings, so there's not a lot of the product on there, but it does puff up and expand and give a great texture using the Expanding Mousse. My favorite cards are the ones I made that I combined the two different types of mousse and a new set of feather stencils I just received from a Colorful Life Designs. I applied the Egyptian Gold Crackle Mousse through a large feather stencil, and then I let it sit until it totally cracked. And then I stenciled on the smaller feather stencil on top with some black ink, and I like the look of that. Over here, I cut out the letters Y-O-U using a cat Scrappiness dies, and I applied some of the Egyptian, that's what it's called, right? Boatyard blue with another feather stencil over here. So I have the two different types of mousse on there and a card that I just love how that turned out. This is the card that we're going to make in the video today. My favorite style of card right now is the slimline size, which fits into legal size envelopes. I'm also finding that I want to make cards to show my gratitude towards the many heroes in the hospitals and grocery stores and delivering food and other necessities, so I'm making a lot of thank you cards currently. I have lost my other feather here. Started by, I took the larger feather stencil and I sprayed it first with Pixie spray, and then I masked off the areas that are not, so that the mousse doesn't get on areas that I don't want. I've cut a piece of Ken Oliver designer paper 3 by 8 1/4. I actually had to put a couple together to do that, but it worked out fine. I have my, this is going to be the Expanding Mousse. So I'm going to take some with my knife, palette knife, and apply it through the openings. Of the stencil. Remove those masks. Lift up the stencil. And now I'm just going to scrape the excess off of here. Put it back in the jar. You're going to want to wash your stencils and your equipment right away and not let that sit on it. Now another advantage, I don't know if you can tell, I've decided that the Expanding Mousse is my favorite. One of the advantages that you can do with this is to sprinkle a little bit of embossing enamel or other products on top, and you can't do that with the Crackle Mousse. If you mix anything in or put anything, it's just not going to crack. So I'm kind of liking the look to just add a little bit of color. And this is a Stampendous Chunky Metallic Seasonings Embossing Enamel. And then I'm going to heat set it. I'm not going to have you listen to the whole thing, but I'll start it and show you, and then finish it off then. So the Expanding Mousse has started to expand and bubble, and the embossing powder that I added has melted. And I will get right back. Okay, I have let that expand, and I will show you that in a minute. And then I'm working on the smaller feather stencil, and what I've done is taken some of the gold Crackle Mousse and put it on a craft sheet, and then I put a bunch of evergreen fern of the Nuvo Aqua Flow pen, which is a liquid watercolor, and I've mixed it up until I liked the shade, and then I'm going to pick it up and apply it through this smaller feather stencil. And remove the masking paper. And then remove the stencil. And it is ready to go. This is the Expanding Mousse feather that I was able to heat set right away. This we're going to have to leave sit for quite a while, but I'll be back when it's ready. So it's about 3 hours later, and the Crackle Mousse has cracked. I've applied it to the front of the card, and I added some of the Midas Touch Nuvo Aqua Shimmer, which is a gold sparkly pen with color in it, and so I added some of the gold to the top of the Crackle Mousse. This part here again was made with the Expanding Mousse, so there's no waiting. You can heat set it right away, and it will not really crack, but it bubbles and expands and has a really cool texture. And then the cracks in there is also really nice texture. So there's both options, and my gratitude card is complete. I love how these cards turned out and hope they inspired you to give Crackle and/or Expanding Mousse a try. Thanks for watching, sharing, and subscribing, and thanks too for helping me share the joy of creativity.